So, ladies and gentlemen, we have three secretaries of states, Kerala, Telangana, and Maharashtra with us. The idea is that you've heard of you've heard most of the speakers in the day to day talking about what Bharat solution should be, what impact it should look at, what are the building blocks of Bharat. You heard Devjani talking about the three building blocks of what it will take to do Bharat solutions and scale them. Here I have three IT secretaries with me, and in their respective states, they have been relentlessly working in the last many years to put solutions and tech in place. So let me sort of try and deep dive a little bit into how does this Bharat really get executed at the state level, and just for all of us to understand, states are the the biggest stakeholder in implementing these solutions. Um, Mr. Jayesh, Ranjan, Mr. Sivasankar, and Mr. Srinivas, are you able to hear me very well, sir?
Yeah, yes. It's good.
Okay, so let me start by asking a fairly common question. What really are your priority areas for tech invention or tech interventions in your state? For example, what are the couple of areas that you would pick for spearheading implementation or adoption of Bharat solutions? And probably how is the state actually adopting these solutions to improve quality of living in rural, maybe semi-urban parts of the state? Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, can I have your comments, and then I'll move on to the next speaker.
Sure. So let me add one more dimension to what is being discussed. I have been on for the last couple of hours or so. So I would like to add one more dimension. See, I have no difference of opinion with anyone else that when we are looking at rapid expanding the pace of digitalization, etc., we must cater to the requirements of Bharat, and how do we create solutions for them? How does that adoption happen? All that, all those discussions, all those points are very, very valid. But I would, as I said, I would like to add two more dimensions to it. One is, what is the digital infrastructure available today to reach out to Bharat? And most of you would be aware that national government has a flagship program called Digital India, under which broadband is to be provided till the Gram Panchayat level. But in Telangana, our goals are much more ambitious than Digital India. We want to ensure that every household gets reliable optic fiber connectivity. And we would like support of Government of India at this juncture to really hasten the pace of the way we are going to provide reliable connectivity. Of course, optic fiber connectivity is one way, but we also have opportunity to provide 4G connectivity now, 5G as quickly as possible, Wi-Fi solutions, etc. So we must also provide digital reliable infrastructure to reach out to Bharat. Then the second important dimension which I want to bring in at this point in time is that we do have villages in India which are digital villages, where we do have some amount of connectivity, etc. But we have still seen, for example, there are digital villages in Telangana as well, but I have been to some of these villages and I still see that there are many households. In fact, a majority of the households in those villages, even when bandwidth is available right at their doorstep, they have not gone ahead and invested in buying a device or a mechanism through which they can access that technology. So for many of them, this is still not a priority. And of course, there are some who can't afford it. So we also need to think about them in a different way. But how do you also convince Bharat that digital technology is worth it? It is worth becoming a consumer and a stakeholder. And I see two solutions to it. One is, of course, digital literacy, which is a very important component of Digital India also, but it needs to be done much more robustly. Some of you may be familiar that in our country, functional literacy is also not there 100%. But the goalpost of functional literacy is very, very low. If you're able to read and write your name, you can claim to be a functionally literate person. But this won't work for a digital literacy programs. We have to have much more robust programs. But the last point which I want to make is that what will really work if we have to bring more and more of Bharat to become digital consumers, to take part in all the health and education and livelihoods and e-commerce programs that startups and tech companies and everyone roll out, is to convince them that this technology works for them. So we have to identify the precise pain points of the Bharat consumers, offer solutions at their doorstep, and show to them that by virtue of this solution, your life has improved by so much of quantum. So this is also a very important framework to understand the Bharat versus India debate that we are having.
So thank you for that. Thank you for that, Mr. Jayesh Ranjan. Let me go over to Mr. Sivasankar and ask him uh, how how is the state actually adopting these solutions at a ground level? What is the mechanism the state is following in probably identifying and then procuring and then implementing these solutions? Given that a lot of these solutions actually come from either startups or small companies whose ability to execute is sometimes a little limited in terms of monetary bandwidth, in terms of resources, and in terms of location. So, Mr. Shivshankar, would love to hear your comments on this.
I'm not very sure how relevant my comments would be for the overall Indian context, because in Kerala we have a very unique situation where the urban-rural divide is very thin. Between the so-called rural area in Kerala is not like a typical Indian rural scenario. But what we have been doing is we have looked at, we have a very interesting framework. We have, every month we have one day exclusively dedicated as an idea day, where any startup can come with any solution which they have, which they feel will address a given problem. They will define the problem, they will send this, they will also provide the solution. This gets evaluated by the user agencies, who primarily from government or government related agencies. And we also have what we call as a demand day, where the individual departments say that, look, these are the things which we need to fix. And then we post it. It's something like a hackathon type of this thing, but it's a bit more focused. But every month we have it. And this evaluation is done with the help of the industry, which is the IT industry or the knowledge industry. So through this process, we have been able to practically identify a large number of solutions. Some of them are very science fiction type of solutions. Some of them have translated into work. That is one set of initiatives which have taken. The second set of initiatives which we have taken is bringing forth the policy of opening up government as a marketplace for startups. So we can buy from a startup, any purchasing officer in a department can buy from a startup up to 20 lakhs without a tender. If the product is up to 100 lakhs, he can go through a limited tender among startups alone. So this has given a very big boost to the startups in opening up the government. So we have practically the equation between the startup and the government and industry, because industry is also evaluating this whole program, fairly well clearly defined. But the big issue which I find with respect to Bharat or making for Bharat or innovating for Bharat is the funding. Primarily, the entire startup ecosystem in the country, the funding model is a Western model. It's a valuation model. When you build for Bharat, when you build solutions like this, you don't have that valuation coming in. The valuation of a Uber or a Oyo type of valuation is what keeps those startups going. And here, that type of funds really do not come in. So unless we sort out this funding framework, we will reach nowhere. We have excellent ideas. We have people who know the domain, who can come together, people who know the technology, who can mentor the startups. But then, and government can do the initial purchase type of thing. But then going big, making for India as a whole, making for the globe as a whole, as Shamitakam was mentioning and all. For that to happen, you need massive funding. That the existing types of funding systems which we have are not useful or not tailored to the requirements of the grassroots level starters. That is the situation, and this needs to get fixed. That is where Devjani's comment on having a Bharat fund makes tremendous sense. But we already have a fund of fund set up by the ministry in Delhi. I mean, none of us have seen any of those funds. So funding the startups is an area where some innovative, disruptive work needs to happen.
Excellent, sir. I mean, I think this is very much in line with what uh, the speakers ahead of you also pointed. We have to really discover new funding models for Bharat solutions. So coming back to Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, uh, you know, my question is, how is Telangana really procuring solutions in this space? I understand that you have a large startup ecosystem as well as a large requirement on your side. What is the process a government like Telangana, as refined in IT uh, uh, as anyone, would procure these solutions? What is really the mechanism, like Mr. Sivasankar explained for Kerala? What is the mechanism that you would follow to identify areas and then going about identifying use cases and then bringing startups to it?
So Gaurav, the process that we follow in Telangana is not very different from what is done in Kerala. We also have a very progressive policy for innovation and startups. And as Mr. Kant was mentioning in the earlier session, we actually guarantee that if the startup has a relevant product or solution which is relevant for the people, important for the government, then we promise that we will be the first customer. And unlike Kerala, there are no limits. There is no financial limits that only if it is up to 1 crore will be procured from you. Otherwise, you have to participate in a bid. It is absolutely a commitment of the government that we will procure it from you. And again, I'm very proud to share with you that in the last, let us say, 3.5 years or so, we have procured more than 40 solutions from startups, which have been rolled out in different spheres. But I would like to add something else also. In fact, it appears as if it is an exam when you are where you are asking questions to me and I'm answering to a different set of questions. But I find something very important to say now, and I would like to share this with you. See, we are all the while, the earlier session, the session before, and now we are only looking at the possibility of tech companies, startups giving solutions to the requirements of Bharat. But in Telangana, I would like to share this with you. This is something very important and relevant, that we are also encouraging Bharat to develop their own solutions. In fact, I'm sure all of us would agree that people in Bharat also have lots of native intelligence, they have wisdom. And the whole reason India has not broken into an anarchy, despite the fact that people face multiple problems in Bharat, is because people find local solutions. In a derogatory way, we typically use the term jugad, that they have done some jugad and found some solution. But if you do a deeper dive in this jugad, you find that there is lots of science in it, there's lots of wisdom in it, and they've managed to find some local solution. But is it possible to refine those solutions? Is it possible to improve the technologies? Is it possible to make it more commercial? So this is a track which we have started working on for the last 2 years. And we have created a separate institution to do that. This is called the Telangana State Innovation Scheme. Of course, it is not very different from what people like Professor Anil Gupta of the Honeybee Network and so many others have been doing it, but we have done it with a more structured way. We have brought the best market professionals who have understanding of rural innovation. And again, I feel very proud to share that in the last 2.5 years, since this institution is up and running, we have been able to highlight at least 10 plus rural products which matter a lot to people. Many of them are agriculture related. And as you know, Bharat relies a lot on efficiencies in agriculture, etc. So this is another lens that we need to put on when we are looking for solutions for Bharat. One is people from outside giving solutions, but how do you enable people from within Bharat to find their own solutions?
Thank you for that. Quickly moving over to a little different question here. We've been all talking about scaling some of these solutions. Most of us, most states, more government, we over time we have been able to identify point solutions from startups, from companies, which sort of have impact in mind and are designed for Bharat. Where we really sort of struggle is getting the solutions out of a POC and trying to scale them to an enterprise class implementation or a wide implementation across the state. Would like to hear maybe one example each from both of you as to how having taken one solution and sort of tried and scaled it, whether it's a COVID solution or maybe pre-pandemic situation.
Video.
Taken scaled it across more states, across a certain part of the state, which sort of is to one impact area. That would be an extremely enriching experience for our viewers to actually know from you.
You want me to respond
Shall
to
I?
that?
Yeah. So anybody. So Mr. Shiv Shankaran, go ahead, and then I'll come to you, Mr. Ranjan.
Now you can see, I hope, Mr.
Yes, I can see you. Welcome, dear Srinivas. We now have Mr. Srinivas, Principal Secretary.
I was listening to both Mr. Jayesh, Ranjan and Mr. Sivasankar. Good evening to all of you.
We
Sorry for that.
So, Mr. Srinivas, my question to all the three of you, in fact, is very important for the viewers here. As states, we've been extremely good in, maybe picking up POCs, doing point solutions, bringing startups, helping them to seed a solution. I'd be really interested to uncover a situation where a point solution could be scaled to a true impact implementation, which is where a lot of us really struggle as companies, as startups, to see that scale from government. So love to hear an experience from your side where you have taken a solution and actually scaled, and what were the challenges, and how did the startup respond, and what is your advice to the startup? So Mr. Srinivas, if I can have your view, then I'll go to Mr. Shiv Shankar and then.
Thanks very much. And one point I would like to take up, since you wanted one single point. Recently, about 5 months back, 3 months back, in fact, we did a pilot which we have scaled up. That is regarding using blockchain for disbursal of loans to farmers. I think perhaps I remember if you were there in that national conference in Bombay, where we did unveil a platform, blockchain platform for giving loans to farmers. So we did give to one farmer there as a symbolic way, but otherwise, then we scaled it up. In fact, we roped in the Maharashtra State Cooperative Bank for this purpose, because that structure exists. It's a very strong structure that we have in the state, as in other states as well, some of the other states. It has a robust district cooperative banks. Then below that, there are, village primary agriculture credit societies, about 30,000-40,000 of them, which are running. So what we did is we just linked this platform, which was built by a startup, in fact, for using blockchain for assessment of credit to the farmers. And this credit is generally given to farmers based on the warehouse receipts. So we link the warehouse receipts where the produce is kept, and based on that, since it's an NI, negotiable instrument, credit should be given. It was happening earlier also, but it used to take at least 10 to 15 days, and it was all manual process, which we have done away with. And now we have linked it with all the Maharashtra State Cooperative Bank and also the DCC Bank that have been linked to them. So from this year, we are able to actually disburse loan. The Kharif season is coming, so we are confident that we roll through. And second, if you want more examples, I can give a couple of more. I think just I leave it to my colleagues as well. Thanks.
So let me go off to Mr. Shiv Shankaran and hear his experience on maybe scaling within a small state like Kerala. But I understand that there's some fantastic work that Kerala has done. I would love to hear from you, sir.
Yeah, you see, we don't have any startup which basically operates at the POC level.
Hello.
Yeah.
Of there was a problem.
Go ahead, sir.
Beyond POC type of thing. So I'll just give you two examples. One is you wanted something on the COVID pandemic related thing. We had an episode of Nipah virus outbreak last year. And one major issue which we faced at that point of time was lot of people talking on behalf of government. And I won't say it as fake news, but then WhatsApp and the entire social media was being cluttered with multiple messages looking very officious. There was one startup which had a very interesting product, because this guy had gone to a mall, and then the mall had given him a 30% discount or something, and then the mall asked him for his phone number so that next time when there is a sale they can alert him. He didn't like that, so he created a platform where without revealing his phone number he can listen into all these announcements. So he customized that and made it into a pandemic alert app. And today, this app is extensively used during this pandemic time, COVID time. All announcements made by government at various levels are, this is official channel, this is official spokesperson type of thing. That is an extremely scalable type of thing. And now every panchayat wants to actually onboard this app. So this is available in 2 languages, 2 or 3 languages. And I mean, scaling up to vernacular is not a very difficult thing. On the hardware side, we had a similar model, which I think people would know. This is again of a robot which cleans the manholes. Primarily, manhole cleaning has been done manually, and it leads to a lot of casualties, and it's not a desirable thing. So this robot which cleans the manholes has also been scaled up, and it gets deployed largely. But in both these cases, the issue was to scale up, they need funds, and funds need to come in from some place or the other. You need to produce large number of robots, then only you can sell to municipalities or water utilities type of thing. And that fund is not there. This is why I keep coming back to the funding issue. What this startup has done is they have not diluted, because their valuation is still fairly dicey. They don't have Uber type valuation. What they have done is they have primarily surveyed on CSR funds. And since manhole cleaning and manual scavenging are all very good areas where CSR can work, they have survived. This direct messaging app has survived basically because government or government agencies have been funding it. But for them to scale it up to a real global or Bharat product type of this thing, they would require much more funds to get infused. And these funds are just not available in the marketplace. That is the issue.
So we'll quickly go over to Mr. Jayesh Ranjan to hear one experience from Telangana, scaling up a solution to a large degree, and what has been his experience.
Yes, I'll also give a COVID experience, COVID example rather. So during the lockdown period, all of us would have experienced difficulty in getting groceries. And while large e-commerce companies were permitted to supply groceries, but typically in smaller neighborhoods, etc., we have a grocery store with whom we have a long-standing relation. We get groceries from there. Maybe our fathers used to get it from there. Our grandfathers used to get it from there. A relation builds with a local grocery wala. We call them Kirana stores here in Hyderabad, in Telangana. And obviously, most of them are run by people who are not very tech savvy. They're not educated. They're old fashioned. So they were not able to kind of ride on this e-commerce wave. So we have partnered with a startup called Global Linker, and we have got thousands of these Kirana stores across the state converted into e-stores. And within a matter of hours, a store can be converted into a e-store. All the stocks available with them can be displayed on their website. A payment gateway can be created. They just need to engage some boys to deliver stuff to your home. And of course, I will confess that we have not been able to penetrate, take this to right up to the villages, but we have taken this to district headquarters, to block headquarters, to mandal headquarters, and so on and so forth. It's a fairly widespread solution of helping the local Kirana stores become digital.
So I think we have 3 examples from 3 states now. So I'll slightly change gears. I'll get into a little more difficult question. When we look at Bharat as a solution stack, and we are trying to look at solutions that go into semi-urban and rural areas of India, government, or rather state government, remain one of the anchor clients for all of this. And like what Mr. Khan just spoke very highly of, that government has to be the first buyer. And especially within government, state governments have a key role to be the anchor client of all of these solutions, give them the first impetus and help them scale. Now, I say this on behalf of a lot of startups, a lot of smaller companies. Sometimes it's quite frustrating for some of them to work with the state machinery, trying to work their way through various departments and buying agencies and all of that. And overall, the procurement engine or the procurement cycle or the mechanisms of connecting and buying can be extremely daunting for a smaller company. So I'd love to hear about if as a state, do you recommend changes that you look at to make this a little simpler an exercise, little easier experience for companies to sell to you? Because startups here on this call would love to hear that how can they actually sell to you? Any volunteer for that, Mr. Srinivas?
I'm muted. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, your voice is breaking, but I can hear you.
Yes, your voice is breaking, but I can hear you.
Okay. So one thing we did is, you remember, we piloted this model RFP, you remember, for Maharashtra, which is now in the final stage, just about to start. So where we added but two particular things we added. One is about the cloud platforms, how it can be used. And more importantly, we said how the startups can be onboarded in the process, which is not there in the actually RFP. In the present, because government, we are talking about government as a consumer, as a customer, and how to give access to startups. So we are making it as a matter policy where startups can be accessed directly. And we have defined many various norms that detailing. I would not like to bother you with those detailing, but we have done that. So that is one thing I think should be able to help us and the startups.
In Kerala, we have practically sorted that out long back. We have done three things. One is we have dedicated startup, dedicated agency for the startup mission, which actually handholds the startup to a large extent. Every department who wants to procure from the startup, we have also identified a nodal officer there. And these nodal officers have been taken through a process of training, so they know how to handle startups. And so the issues which generally are associated with startup procurement or general government procurement are by and large not there. As I mentioned earlier, we have a special dispensation opening up government as a marketplace for startups. So that's not there. But whatever, there are certain issues. I'm not saying that it is completely hassle-free type of those things. There are certain issues, but these issues, whatever remain, are, I think, good learning experience for the startups. They should not see that, I mean, selling a product and getting the money immediately, it doesn't really happen even in the private sector. So whatever they will face in the real world, that only they experience. They don't experience any extra difficulties or challenges in dealing with government. We have insulated them substantially here.
Yeah, I think that is absolutely needed if startups or companies have to function and dedicate themselves to building these solutions. So they can either handle the machinery or they can handle the tech. They can't handle really both sides at the same time. So I think that's a very valid point. And I think we've almost run out of time. Vibhor, do we have any questions from the audience?
Let me see, Gaurav. We have some questions.
We have some questions. Let me send it to you.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I have
Yeah,
one
so I have one or two.
No, I think we have covered most of this. So
we'll cover most of this. So
I will quickly, sort of run out of time on this and try and just get maybe a closing comment from each one of you about your view on how do we enable Bharat, and what is your advice to startups who are working on this as a state, and then close this conversation, sir. Mr. Jayesh, can I have your closing comments, please?
Yeah, my closing comment is very straightforward. The Telangana's startup and innovation policy is very progressive. We help the startups in getting government orders. My department, which is the IT department, is the nodal agency. We do all the hand holding for them. They don't have to run around as you. They don't have to run around as you. As you rightly mentioned. But let me also clarify that it is available only to those startups which are located in Telangana. So the only suggestion which I can give to startups who are listening in into this conversation is to move to Telangana as fast as you can.
Yeah. So, Mr. Srinivas?
We also have a very good, robust startup ecosystem, especially in fintech. And now we are moving towards the tier 2 and tier 3 cities. A lot of startups know all this. But on a different note, I would like to give one small concluding comment. The future will be for the states, especially states like bigger states like Maharashtra, to move into three things. One is connecting telecom with IT based on cloud and edge computing. This is the future of the entire governance. Government should adopt this. BharatNet is taking care of the telecom network and the entire backbone system, which Kerala and Telangana are also doing, of course. But what is important is to build the platforms based on that in a big time. Actually, what we have done only to scratch the surface, as I can see. In fact, as COVID has very clearly pointed out, suddenly we wanted virtual classes, virtual telemedicine, and all that. And especially in the health sector, a lot of long way to go, because however much we might try, I'll just take 10 seconds. However much we might, we'll never be able to reach the patient bed ratio or bed patient doctor ratio. So the telemedicine is the future thing actually, and the present thing in fact right now. So it's a high time that we should go to that, and all our solution, including startup solution in these sectors, will be most welcome in the state. We're looking forward. Thanks.
So, Mr. Sivasankar, can I?
I think my point is very simple. We need to have a collaborative framework by which right now states, all the states try to say that they have the best startup ecosystem and try to attract startups and make them grow. That's all fine. But what I was trying to mention was that if you're trying to say that, as Mr. Amitabh Khan was mentioning, startup needs to look at a global market type of this thing. A startup which, let's say, is from Telangana and they have successfully tested in Telangana, they should have the first right of getting the market in other states as well. Instead of some startup in Maharashtra or Kerala trying to aid them and create a similar product, and then I say that very parochially that this is my startup, so I will encourage them. That doesn't really work. So a full-fledged implementation.
So I think that brings us to an end of this panel. Thank you very much, Mr. Srinivas. Thank you very much, Mr. Jayesh, and thank you very much, Mr. Sivasankar, for giving time and helping startups and the ecosystem understand the view of the state. With this, we come to the end of this panel. And